Hey guys, what's happening? So we are right back again with another Carnage series, which now takes us into the next chapter of the god Carnage, as well as his plans after Death of the Venomverse. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so heading into this new series, we continue from the aftermath of what we'd seen in Extreme Venomverse as well as Death of the Venomverse, where at the time both of those events came together as like this huge finale to the journey that the Carnage symbiote began in Carnage Volume 3, where ultimately the Carnage symbiote was collecting new powers and ridding itself of all weaknesses so that it could reach a level of godhood that would meet or exceed the recently obtained godhood of 616 Eddie Brock. So as a result, Carnage went on to kill the Null of another universe, as well as multiple Venoms from across the Venomverse, which ultimately gave Carnage the power and the godhood that he was looking for. But now we find that Carnage is seeking the answer to what all of that actually means, which has now led the Carnage symbiote to Omnipotent City. And also, if you need to get caught up, I got all the playlists down in the description in case you need to go back and start from the very beginning. But right now for the Carnage symbiote, with it making its way here to Omnipotent City, Carnage has cut its way through to the halls of All-Knowing, and the Lord Librarian knows exactly why. And some of you guys may remember the Lord Librarian from our talks on Jason Aaron Thor and the God Butcher storyline, but if not, all you really need to know is that the Halls of All-Knowing is like your divine archive, which is also referred to as the exalted library of all gods. It's packed with cosmic knowledge of not only all the gods and their history, but also records of their potential futures that have yet to be written and recorded. So when Carnage shows up here, the Lord Librarian is well aware of what Carnage has been up to and what he's become, and he knows that those who come to the Hall of All-Knowing, they come here seeking answers. And through the course of this bloodbath, there's a bit of an exchange between Carnage and the Lord Librarian, because Carnage tells the Librarian, "I know what I am. I have conquered every weakness of the symbiote. I have the powers of a god, the immortality of a god. I have made myself what I am." Only for the Librarian to tell him, "Yet you stand before me, half a creature, and you come to us for answers you already have, asking all the wrong questions." So then Carnage is like, "Alright, well then enlighten me, Lord Librarian, what are the right questions?" So he tells Carnage the questions that he should be asking, like if you are a god, who prays to you, who worships you, what is your doctrine, what were you created to do, what Carnage, what is your purpose? And as Carnage is just destroying these guards, I do want to point out that this struggle of finding new purpose with this power for Carnage is not necessarily something new, because in Carnage Volume 3, back when he was bonded to Detective Shade, there was a brief time when Carnage and Detective Shade were separated, where during that time Shade came across Spiderling, the current pattern weaver, who told him how what Carnage was doing was messing with the web of life and destiny. And fast forward to Web of Carnage, the Carnage symbiote looked into Shade's memories, and it made Carnage curious about the universe or someone else having plans for what his destiny should be. And for Carnage, outside of going after Eddie Brock, he doesn't really know what that looks like for himself. So along the way, Carnage has really just been jumping from one thread to the next, trying to figure that out. Because at one point, he wanted a host, so he took Detective Shade, and then he changed his mind. After that, he crossed paths with Morlun, came close to killing him and taking his power, only to then change his mind and be like, "Nah, I don't want to be like this guy," which has brought him here to Omnipotent City in hopes of getting that definitive answer. But instead, with Carnage getting this lecture from the Lord Librarian, just before he uses the black hole on his staff to send Carnage away, we're told that it's quite possible that the Lord Librarian may have given Carnage the answer that he needed, simply by telling Carnage the right questions to ask, like who prays to you, who worships you, what's your doctrine, what's your purpose, and where is your other half? And it now has the Lord Librarian, who lost his hand in the process, quite a bit concerned about what may come after this. But just after we see Carnage sent through this black hole, we find that he was sent to the place where it all began, back home on Rikers Island, where the Carnage symbiote was born and initially bonded with Cletus Cassidy. And when Carnage arrives here, this is where we see the beginning of the new chapter take off, because the first thing he does is consume this inmate, and not so much for just the sake of consumption, but instead to reform and reshape this guy, almost like a process of terraformation, to turn this dude into a newly formed version of Cletus Cassidy. and he places inside of it an imprint of Cassidy's memories, essentially bringing back the Cletus Cassidy who was here 10 years ago. And the symbiote goes on to fill him in with information from the past decade, but it's done in a way where it's not like this is a carbon copy of your modern day Cletus Cassidy, but instead it's more like a refresh, so that the new Carnage can get the old Cletus back. And as soon as this happens, we go over to Flash Thompson, who can sense that something has changed, and though he's not exactly sure what exactly it is, it comes to him in this moment like he's waking up from a nightmare. But as it stands right now, he doesn't have the time to try and figure it out, because as soon as he gets up, he's gotta head out to work, because after all, these bills gotta get paid. But this whole time, he can feel the anti-venom symbiote within him, sensing a new presence, a shift in circumstances, but he can't really dig into it at the moment because he has to get to work. While in the meantime, this newly born Cletus Cassidy is getting caught up with the events that have taken place over the past 10 years. And just after this, when he heads over to a diner, and really just to get something to eat, we're told in his hunger, Carnage finds the things that he has missed the most. The need, it is human desires. To live, to act, to mate, to kill. His purpose overtakes the symbiotes. It is beyond a bond. Carnage and Cletus consume each other. They are one. And so he meets this waitress named Sarah, and he ends up ordering a cheeseburger with everything on it, with a waffle for dessert, because he really did come here to get something to eat. But then there's this moment where Sarah comes back, cleaning the table just behind him, so he asks her for some coffee, and she asks him what's he reading, so he tells her he's reading the Bible. So at first she feels a bit awkward, so she apologizes. So he asks her why she's sorry, and he tells her that they're just words, as he goes on to question if she's a God-fearing woman, cause to him the term God-fearing has never made much of any sense. And in a very rhetorical way, he asks her why would anyone fear a God who is absent and indifferent. And then he goes on to ask Sarah what she's listening to. So she tells him she's listening to a true crime podcast, and she apologizes again, since it was playing loud enough that he could hear it through her headphones. But as she starts to turn it off, he asks her why does she listen to it, and she just goes through a number of her reasonings, telling him like, I don't know, it's fascinating I suppose, makes me feel prepared, something about knowing what's truly out there, and it's the mystery of it. Which right there has him like, yes, the mystery is the key. So he thanks Sarah, and then he continues to go on and read and write in this Bible. And as he does, we're told that he feels the weight of godliness on his shoulders, but he finds that he is equal to it. As the hours pass, a plan forms, a doctrine. It feels right. This world feels ready for Carnage. So going forward, now that Carnage has his doctrine and his plan put together, we'll find for some time that he's really gonna lean into that mystery portion of it. Because after this, we jump forward 2 weeks later, where we find Flash going on about his evening as Anti-Venom, but this whole time he can't shake the fact that this feeling, this thing that has his symbiote senses all stirred up, it's got him to the point to where he's anxious and he's ready for something to pop up to show him who or what exactly has brought about this change. And for a moment, Flash thinks to himself that it can't be as bad as he thinks it is, but he'll soon discover that he was wrong about that. Because next, when we go back to Carnage, we follow him through a series of different murders that at a first glance seem like they're very random, but for each one of these victims who are very different, ranging from a retired veteran to this other guy that's in prison for being a teenage mass shooter. The one thing these victims clearly have in common is that each of them had the same name as one of the 12 disciples of Christ. And as Carnage continues, we see him number each of them all the way up to the number 11, where at this point we hop over to Flash, who notices that his phone's a bit more quiet than usual, which in a way is a sign of the times, if you will. But right now when we find Flash at Poor Decisions Pub and Restaurant, we find him racking up quite the tab as he tries to drink away that dark feeling that hasn't solidified into anything yet. But as it stands, the Anti-Venom symbiote won't allow Flash to get drunk, which is the complete opposite from what we saw with Agent Venom, because in Circle of 4 that man was hammered. But while he's here talking to the bartender, Arya, who on one hand is telling Flash that he's had enough, but on the other hand she's kind of impressed that he hasn't fallen on his face by now. While he's here talking to Arya, a fight breaks out, so Flash jumps in to defuse the situation. But when he does, he uses a bit of excessive force, so Arya more or less tells him to fall back, but Flash just lets her know that he was just trying to help. And she tells Flash that she knows and that he should just head home. But after he leaves, the next thing we see is a mysterious glass box that's covered sitting in the middle of Times Square that's soon after unveiled, revealing inside that it's holding the tech billionaire Nathaniel Jones, who has the number 12 carved into his chest. And all around this container we see the swirling symbol and other writings saying where's John, where's Peter, and at first people are just stopping and watching and filming on their phones, because they think that it's just some publicity stunt. But then suddenly, scalding hot water starts to fill up this container, causing the water to turn into blood, which right there just lets everybody know that this just got real. But because people were streaming this online, this is how it was brought to Flash's attention, and right away it punches him in the gut, and he knows it is here. He is here, because he knows that this horrific display that seems like a mystery to most is actually Carnage inviting them to church. Which, yeah. And you know, I will say, I kinda got mixed feelings about how this is starting, because in a lot of ways it just feels like Carnage was ready a bit too early in comparison to what's going on in the Venom series with Eddie Brock. And to me it just kinda feels like Marvel's got Carnage spinning his wheels right now until Eddie's ready. Which, I mean, I could be way off, but that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting here. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Because nonetheless, I'll be keeping an eye on this series because it's Carnage. But I'm also just hoping that this story doesn't feel like a fluff piece. But once again, we'll see what happens. Because as it stands right now, I'm skating on that 50-50. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.